Hello in quarantine, everybody. I hope we're all safe. I hope we're all being smart. I hope we're all wearing some f***ing masks. I'm here today not to talk about masks, but to talk about a new plugin. This is it's the new Flash function plugin. It's a upgrade to the existing temp page plugin. Before I get into all that, I have broken down in the video description the times where each section of video exists. So if you're just here for like 2 seconds of information, you don't have to sit through 20 minutes of video to get to it. There's also a user manual that's a PDF. With that said, so the Flash function plugin, it is, as I was saying, is an upgrade to the temp page plugin. For those who are unaware of that plugin, the concept is that you press a button, you are taken to a different page of faders, you do what you need to do with those faders, and then you release the button and you're back where you were. The intention is that, let's say for things like house lights and haze and group masters, you have quick access to faders that you want quick access to but don't necessarily want taking up your main fader space during a show, especially if you're not on a show with a budget for a full size. So that was the intention of that plugin. I've gone through quite a few upgrades or revisions, whatever you want to call them, in this version of it. Some of them are just the UI. Like I built this whole little like user interface system with go-to commands that I was super proud of and took way too long. But most of them were actually functionality improvements. The biggest thing is that it now supports multi-user sessions, which is kind of a big thing. So previously, if you were using this and you were not logged in as the same user as the master of the session, or you were not the master of the session, the plugin was not going to work correctly. It would be executing commands on their desk because sequence commands and remote commands, commands from remotes such as MIDI or DMX, are all executed by the master of the session. That's where this UserCmd plugin comes into play. It's part of the package, and you can skip to that part for more information on how that's working, but I will cover that. The other big thing, it is now set up for custom commands. So previously, you ran the installer, it would make a plugin for when you press the button and another plugin for when you release the button. And if you wanted to do anything custom, you had to dig into the code and figure out where to add a command, and it was a kind of a hot mess on that end. So for this one, when you press a button, it fires a macro. And when you release the button, it fires another macro, which means if you've been using this desk for more than 4 seconds and you're familiar with macros, and I apologize if that sounds condescending, it's not meant to, you should be aware of how to add custom stuff in, because you just go find the macro that's firing and you can put your new stuff in there, which I have done. I've got one, I'm going to get into that in just a second, but I've got a couple of custom versions set up just to show you kind of what can be done with it. The last thing is that it is set up for a queuing system. I guess I shouldn't have closed that plugin, macro, whatever. It's got a queuing system set up for views as well now, which just means that the plugin's handling a bunch of stuff so that, like, if you flub something and commands get there at weird times, you don't get stuck on a different page, or if you've got 2 of the buttons installed, you can't get stuck on somewhere that you didn't want to be. It's doing a whole bunch of stuff to kind of, I don't want to say dummy proof it, but prevent any anomalies in how commands get executed from screwing you up. So that is now part of it. Again, the 2 big things were that support for multi-user sessions and custom commands. So with that said, let's look at a few custom commands we can do. So first off, let's look at the built-in functionality. Let me take a step forward and 2 back. Let's get to our screen 1 here. This guy. Cool. Let's make you not full screen. Yeah, you can be full screen. Sorry, I can't figure things out. All right. So the built-in functionality, this is the same utility button I would be using on a show. It takes me to a view and a page that I want to access for anything that I need quick access to. So I press it down, my page changes, my view changes, I release it, I'm back where I was. Don't pay too much attention to the content. This was a show file, and it's been very bastardized at this point. So there's the built-in purpose. Takes to a view, takes to a page, you release it, you go back to where you were. Cool. I've got it set up for some other things as well. If I shuffle this guy over this way, let me just take a quick peek to make sure it will show up. And yeah, close enough. So I've got one set up as a push to talk. So basically I've got this channel, this aux coming out of my audio interface that I use with my comms for shows. And what I wanted to do was be able to route my microphone through the audio interface to the stage, but only when I needed to communicate with people. Obviously, the guys on stage don't want to hear my spot calls. So I set it up so that when I press this button, if we watch this mute icon here, when I press this, it unmutes, and when I release it, it mutes again. It becomes a push to talk button. And that is all happening through MIDI commands. So back on the main screen here, if I edit that macro, we can see that when I press it down, it is sending a MIDI control message, and when I release it, it is sending a different MIDI control message. So that's one example of things you could do with custom commands with it. I've also played around with it instead of changing pages, you want to change surfaces and you just have some stuff fixed to a different surface, you can do that now too. So these two macros is just one is going to surface 2, and then when we release, we go back to surface 1. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring this guy over here. And when I press the surface button, our banks of faders change. So I guess I should have pointed this out first, but we are 16 through 30 right now. When I press the surface button, whatever flash function button, we go to 1 through 15. When I release it, we are back at 16 through 30 using the commands I just showed you here. If you want to get someone's attention, you could build a macro so that it's going to fire a command on someone else's desk to flash their desk lights to grab their attention or something. That is me saying that with the hope that people are actually going to use it for like good. I imagine this will end up getting used just to fuck with people. I'm not advocating being a dick, but I can't stop you if you want to be a dick with it. So like, do whatever you want to do with it. But I'm just trying to show some things that you can do with it. I'm like moving my hands here like you can see me. So that covers, I think, the purpose of the plugin and what it would be used for. So following up here, I'm going to go into the installation, the uninstallation, and the how and why stuff is being done. So that's this portion. Yeah. Alrighty, so let's take a look at the installation process. The first thing we want to do is import our plugin, and one thing to take note of when we do this is that once we import it, we do want to reload the plugin engine. This has to do with a bug involving importing plugins. I'm in discussion with ACT about it right now. We have not found a cause for it yet, but just be aware, once you import it, reload, and this guy will not freak out. So with that said, let's check into our Flash function config. So if we right click or edit click on that, we have our user config for the installation process. This will allow us to set these, and again, these are all starting points. This is where it's going to start looking for space. With all of these, it will check that space is available before it writes anything. It's not going to overwrite anything. So first thing is fixture number and DMX address for our dummy fixture that will be installed to trigger the DMX remote. Next down is the sequence number and executor for the executor that will be generated, the button that will be generated for this. And the last bit is the macro start, where it will start looking to store our two macros for the on and off triggers. The only other setting on this page involves if executing a temp view, where it's going to store that view, but that has nothing to do with the installation. So we'll back out of this. And if we run our plugin, we get a menu and we can pick to install or uninstall. So if we pick install, it will give us all of those settings, as well as telling us which user we are installing as. If we click that, this is the one setting that we can't change from the menu. I've set it up that way. If you guys would rather be able to change it, please let me know. But it is set up to let you know that, hey, this button will only be working for whoever's installing it. So just be aware that if you're on someone else's user profile setting up a page, you will want to get back into your own before you run this. So that's all that's for. The rest of these settings, if we want to change anything, for example, the fixture number, if I wanted to start looking in the 60,000s, I can change that. If I want to change the executor it'll store to, let's say 2.206. Any of these values, you can click on it, you can change the value. If you change your mind about it, you can just back out or hit enter, and if it didn't see anything new, it will just keep the original value. So if we hit continue here, and at any point, if you want to quit, you can just hit the X button. The next section is explaining our button configuration, or allowing us to set it. So you can set a page, you can set a view, you can do both, you can do neither. It will generate the macros either way. This is just letting the plugin set up the commands for those particular items, since those are managed by the plugin later. So we can say page 101 and view, using my temp view. So one thing to note with the page and the view is that you can use either the text that's used to identify it, its name rather, or the number. You don't have to put the text in quotes, you just type it, it will figure out to quote it for you. And then the button name, this is what it's going to name the button you're going to press, the macros, the DMX remote, the fixture that will be generated with it. Everything relating to the installation will be named based on this. I'm just going to call it page 101 for this. And with our setting set, and again, you don't have to use any of these. If you decide you don't want to use a view after all, you can just clear that out and you can wipe the value out. So we'll keep that. So I'll say continue. And there is a progress bar. It just doesn't show when I'm zoomed in. But that's it for the installation as far as what we need to do during it. So once that has run, it will give us a window telling us, hey, here's where everything got stored. That also gets displayed up here in the system monitor. And on screen 2, we will have our two macros that were created for the on and off triggers. If we want to edit those, we can right click on them now and change any commands, but it's just got them pulled up so you don't have to spend any time hunting for them. You know exactly where they are. You can edit them as soon as the installation is done. So if you want to put a custom command in, you can do that now. If we go check our executors, we will see that at 206, specifically 2.206, as we requested, we have our new button labeled as we named it. There's the command for it. If we go into our setup, we can see, we'll check our patch first. There's our dummy fixture. It has matched our number. I thought I typed 01. I might need to check something here. But anyways, there's our dummy fixture patched in. It started its patch at 200.24. And if we go check our DMX remotes, we will see that at 200.24, we have a DMX remote for that same trigger. Please note that the info field in this is used for the uninstaller, so all this information is just for the uninstaller to find everything that was put in at a later point. So if you're going to change anything about it, just don't change that. That is how it will know 2 years ago when you put this button in where everything was stored, so you don't have to worry about things getting moved, screwing up the uninstaller later. But that's it. That is all as far as the installation process goes. So in the next part, we're going to get into the uninstallation. And now that it is time to remove our button, let's go click on the same plugin again. So we'll click on this guy. We will click uninstall this time. Bet you didn't see that coming. So we're going to click on it. It will give us all the installations that we currently have put in here. We're going to pick the one that we want to get rid of. It will ask us, are you sure you want to get rid of this? And we're going to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure. So we're going to click on OK. And it's going to do its thing. You would see a progress bar if the screen wasn't big, but whatever. And it's going to say uninstallation was successful. It's going to tell you what it got rid of. And if you missed it, you can scroll up in the system monitor and see, hey, it did this, and it did that, and it did that, and it did that, and that's what it deleted. So if we go take a look, hey, we don't have an executor here. We don't have any macros here. We can go check our patch again, and that fixture is now gone. The DMX remote for it, that's not how you get to your DMX remotes. The DMX remote for it is now gone. All of the components were removed. So that is the uninstallation. You click a button, you click another button, and it'll do exactly what it says it will do. Ta-da! Alrighty, so at this point, you might be wondering what this UserCmd thing is for. I think I touched on it briefly at the beginning, but I haven't gone into detail on it. So I wanted to go through some explanations as to what this thing is here for and why it's relevant to this and why is it always on. So it's always on because it's running a loop. And actually, before I dive into all that, the problem that it is fixing. So the problem is that when you are in a multi-user session, only the master of the session will execute commands that were sent out by a sequence or by any kind of a remote, which includes DMX remotes, which we are using for the release functions here. So that kind of causes a problem if you're not logged in as the master of the session. If you're trying to press a button and it's not doing anything on your desk, it's going to piss you off a little bit, and whoever's on that other desk is going to be really pissed off about it. So that's where this plugin enters. So this thing is doing a couple things. So you see it's running in loop. It's not like destroying resources or anything. It's allowing proper sleep time to allow other things to jump in and whatever. I've beat the crap out of it. It seems to be working fine. If anybody hits any issues with it, please let me know. But so far, I haven't had any issues with the way I've gotten it set up. So it's running a loop and it's doing a few things. So first off, every 5 seconds, it's going to send out this little heartbeat, just a little status message saying, hey, I'm here, I'm logged in as this user, I'm at this IP running this session, which is the information you're seeing here. Every station running this plugin is listening for those packets so that it can build this table, knowing what IP is associated with which user and which session. Okay, so it has all that information. It knows where each user is. So then we pass it a command. We say we have this command and we want this user to execute it. So first it's going to check, am I that user? Am I logged in? Am I on the console that is logged in as that user? If it is, it will just execute it immediately. If it's not, then it will say, okay, do I know where that user is? If it has information for that user, then it will basically, on the first match that it finds for that, it's going to say, okay, that's located at this IP. It's going to send another little unicast message this time, so it just goes to that console, and it's going to say, here's the command you're supposed to execute. That other console running the same loop is going to receive it and go, okay, time for me to do something, and it's going to execute the command. Cool. So what does that all look like? So first off, here's what the command looks like from one of our installed buttons. We're passing it to Luo. We're saying UserCmd send to this user this command. Maybe I could have switched it around, whatever. So anyways, this command's going to this user. So right now, as I am currently not in session, when I press that button, it's just going to execute on my desk. If we take a look at UserCmd here, we're just seeing command executed by local station. And let's take a look at the command line when that happens. So we're going to see, there's two things I want to point out. We are going to see a command executed by a sequence part, and we're going to see a command executed by a DMX remote. Great. So we see that works in standalone. It doesn't really need to be in use in standalone. So now we're going to join a session. So we are going to join my laptop, which is the other member of the other MA station right now. And when it's done figuring out its life, cool, cool, cool. All right, so now we're going to go press the same button again. So press it, release it. You might notice the slightest bit of delay, no more than the remote command keyword. Let's go take a look at the command line this time. So we'll notice we don't see anything having been executed by either a sequence or a DMX remote. That all happened on the other machine. If we go take a look at the system monitor, we will see that we received a remote command. Actually, way up here, we received a remote command to do macro 1000, which include changing views, which is all this, and then macro 1001, which was us releasing that button. So we pressed it, it sent it to the other station sent it back to us to execute in both instances. And that's pretty much it. So that is what this thing's here for. I know it sounds like a lot of steps. It is a bit going on as far as the logic of it is concerned for the plugin. Processing wise, it's nothing. But yeah, that is the purpose of that. That is why it's there. Straight out of the box, you shouldn't have to change any of the settings. There is some information here showing if you want to go ahead and be using it. Like I said, I think I said at the beginning of this, I haven't released this as a plugin in and of itself yet, but that is coming pretty soon. So there's some demonstrations on how you can send a command. And then there's some settings here which you shouldn't have to adjust. Everything should work as configured the way you receive it. Basically a rule of thumb for adjusting any of these, if you know what it is you need to adjust, then you're probably okay to tweak it. If you don't know what you might be needing to change, there's probably nothing to change. The only thing I can really see anybody needing to play with is the port it's working with, if they have particularly chosen this exact port number, or if they're using some really weird subnet. Short of that, everything should work as is. Alrighty, so before I wrap this all up, there were a couple things I wanted to touch on just involving things to look out for when you're using this plugin. The first of them, I mentioned during the installation, when you import it, just make sure you reload the plugin engine. There's some weird importing bug that involves when plugins import, certain portions will load twice, and it's screwing this one up a little bit. So if you just reload, you're good to go. So that's it for that part. Just import, reload, you're good. The other part involves how DMX remotes behave on MA. So anytime you add or remove a station to the session, anytime something is changing in the session, basically, DMX remotes are going to refire if the DMX value they're associated with is at a level they would fire for, which means that all of our off commands are going to fire. The way that the DMX remotes are working is that when we press this button, we are actually turning off the channel that is normally staying at 100. When we release it, it allows that channel to go back to 100, which is what fires the DMX remote. As such, it defaults to being at 100, which means anytime something on the session changes, when the DMX remotes are being reevaluated, it's going to say, hey, this should be fired. As far as anything that I've put in these macros, any of the Lewis stuff, the page off or view off, that's not going to cause any issues. That's already built to check, hey, it's telling me to turn this off, but it was never turned on, so we're just going to ignore this command. So it's already built for that. You're not going to have any issues there. I'm bringing this up in case you're doing any custom stuff with the buttons, just so you're aware that your off macros will be fired anytime that something happens with the session. Generally, I don't imagine that to be an issue for most people. However, I don't know what you guys are going to put in there. That was the whole point of it being custom. So just be aware of that as you're building them. You might need to set something up in the on macros so that it prevents anything you don't want being fired more than once from firing in the off macros. I hope that sentence made sense. It made sense in my head, but I don't know. So anyways, that's it. That's all of the things to look out for. It was primarily the DMX thing, again, just for anybody doing custom stuff with the commands. And yeah. So that's it. That is this plugin. That's the installing, the uninstalling, the what it's doing, the why it's doing it, and all of it. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, requests, whatever, you can reach out to me on Facebook. You can reach out on my website, galphadesigns.com, which is also where you can download this plugin. There's a mailing list on the site for updates with this plugin or other plugins or new plugins coming out or tutorials and all that. As always, hope you guys are able to find some use for it. Anybody who is using it, please send me some shots of it in use. I just love seeing that stuff, and I do feature some of it on my website. I just think it's really cool to see. Which I think that's it. I think that's me. So I'm gonna shut up. You all stay safe, stay sane, wear a fucking mask, and take care of each other.